I'd like to welcome you to the Newburgh Museum. Thank you for coming out on this hot day. And we've got a hot topic and a hot speaker here for you. When I first moved here, I remember the first thing that struck my mind was the sign right outside of town coming in said, best little town by a dam site, about Newburgh. And I always think about that, and we're going to talk today about the dam site, the Lock 47. And we have a wonderful speaker here, Chris Rutherford. He is born and raised Metropolis, Illinois. His father was the lock master in Paducah at the Lock and Dam 52, was it, did you say? Yes. He is currently employed with the Army Corps of Engineers, of course, the last 25 years, and he's currently stationed at this lock and dam here, the new lock and dam, so to speak. He also had 5 years with the Navy prior to the Corps of Engineers. And we're really happy to have him, and we give a warm welcome to Chris Rutherford.
Welcome. Yeah, I am an operator. I usually do not present things, so bear with me. We'll get through it together. How about that? Just a little history of navigation of the river. 49 locks and movable dams were erected by the United States government between Pittsburgh and Cairo, a distance of 980 miles, giving a 9-foot stage to river navigation. Of course, it was a monument was erected to that by the Ohio Valley Improvement Association. And dozen autoplanes, I'll have to go back and forth on this one. With nearly 200 years of work, open channel was prior to any kind of locks being built. A lot of in the canalization period, that was when we started putting up locks, started damming the rivers. I don't have much on the modernization. Got a few pictures, but that's kind of like the 1955s. What they had to do was they had to make Lock 52 and 53 last longer than they had originally been designed for. So they started adding second 1,200-foot chambers at those locations, and that's kind of what the modernization is talking about, is updating the old locks and dams and building, of course, the new ones. A lot of your early difficulties in navigation prior to your locks and dams was snags, rocks, sandbars. Your steamboats needed 3 feet to travel, and a lot of times there was only 1 or 2 feet available in certain areas of the river. I mean, it would just pretty much dry up. Had extended low water seasons in 1818 and 1820, which, merchandise and people, couldn't travel the river. That was a big way they got their merchandise up and down. But during those periods, it kind of put a halt to it. And because of that, in 1824, the beginning of the Federal Row, President Monroe, in his annual message to Congress, superintendents of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers have been assigned to office of the Corps of Engineers. That's when the Corps of Engineers took over, and they started, at first what they did was they would remove all the obstacles. They would go out, and there was, I think at one point they even held a contest to the best idea to get rid of these snags, and some of them were crazy ideas. Unfortunately, I don't know. It's a little bit before my time, but I know that I've read that they had held a contest on how to get these obstacles out of here. Some failed and some worked. But that's kind of what when the federal moved in, that was the object, was to get these 3 feet of dam for the steamboats, because that's what we were talking back in 1824. Now once they decided to start building rivers, Major Rose studied inland water systems and recommended French movable dams for the Ohio River. What those are wicket dams. We'll go into details about wicket dams, because that's kind of the bread and butter of these old locks was the wicket dam operations. During low water conditions, you would raise the dam, and the vessels would travel through the lock, and vice versa. When high water, you would drop them down and let Mother Nature take its course. It would open up the pass, and the boats would just bypass the lock and dam, or the locks. Initial plan was for 68 dams. The final plan was for 54. 51 dams were completed from 1885 through 1929. And like I said it before, minimum navigation depth of 9 feet. That was the goal, was to make sure all vessels had 9 feet to travel. And we still do that today. You know, the new lock and dam is 10 foot. We maintain 10 foot no matter what, except for when the river takes over and it goes up to 20 feet, you know. And then we just let it do its thing. You know, none of our locks are built for flood control. We have no flood control dams in Louisville District. Everything is for navigation. That's our sole purpose, is to maintain that minimum 9 foot. The locks at all the early dams were 600 foot long by 110 wide, and they were pretty standard. I mean, that's what our small chamber is today. It's the same size as it was on these. Of course, we got the 1200 foot now, but that's kind of what. Yeah, that's universal. That's what it always was. 600, at least 600 foot by 110. This is the very first lock that they built in 1885. This was the first one the Corps built. It's up around Avion, Pennsylvania. That's where that first lock was built. Just kind of a view of that, give you an idea. You know, steamboats. I've seen some pictures. Steamboats pushing barges, which, you know, nowadays you see the big barges pushing, you know, big tow boats, and it's a weird to go back and see some of the older steamboats pushing barges. It doesn't look right. And this is early wicket installation. What they do is they would coffer up and block the river. They would lay your wickets in here, and they're simply just wood based and with metal rods, and they drop down flat when you're not blocking water, and they pick them up when you need to block the dam. Another view of it, modern day wickets haven't changed a lot. I mean, they're very similar. Here's movable dam operations in 1902, and we'll cover more into those too. But yeah, that was the, you know, the hardest part about their job was raising and lowering the wickets by far. The most dangerous thing they did was moving those up and down in the river. Modern day movable dam, you know, same concept. They just have a bit of boats now than the old steamboats. That's your modern day wicket dam. Kind of what they look like. You always had your lock chamber on whatever bank they decided was on. Then you would have your wicket dam, then you would have your bear trap dam, and then a fixed weir. This here would be up, and your wicket dam would go up and down. That's where your pass is. That's where, when you don't need the dam, that's where the boats would go down river. Same thing going up. When the dam's up, you have to use the chamber. And those 600 foot dams, you know, especially as you got more and more modern, you know, it slowed things down a lot. Without a 1200 foot chamber, you know, you would have barges out here every day. I mean, there'd be 100 boats out there all the time. I mean, if we didn't have the bigger chambers.
Could you explain the bear trap?
Yeah, I will a little bit.
Okay.
And here, that's not a very good picture, I apologize, but that's the navigable pass there. That's with the dam down, and lock chambers out of use at that moment. Barges just kind of do their own thing. You know, Ohio River lock and dam fundamentals: dam impound pool for year-round navigation. Once again, with a minimum 9 foot depth. Flow through dams is regulated to maintain constant pool level at dam. Like I said, we'll never go below 10 feet. If you do, you may be looking for a job, because that's rule number 1: do not lose pool. And some dams are movable for riding open river navigation. That's your wicket type dams. You raise and lower vessel between pools. That's how they work. One of the big misconceptions sometimes is locks operate on gravity flow. When you open a valve, the river takes over. You're not pumping water. Some people think we pump water in. That's not the case. You simply open the valve and let the water in, close the valve, it stops it, back it up. Newer lock and dam, where it all kind of began. This is looking upstream. That's your, above the dam you had a guide wall, and below the dam you had a guide wall. What that would allow was for your barges and your towboats to land on that and then shove in. You know, like the new one there, we got the long wall. They come down there, they'll get on that. That's kind of their guide. You know, get them straight and keeps them from, you know, bouncing off your gates and stuff. Of course, that probably looks familiar to some of you. You know, that's the original lock began in 1921 is when they started construction on it. And to get to my pages, that's all right. I don't have it memorized. Once it was completed, it operated until the new dam was completed in 1975. As you can see there, the powerhouse was built in 1928. It still stands. They use it for small venues. Bands practice out of there. I've seen those bands practicing out of there. You know, this here is your wall. Early traffic. You may see some of those vehicles still out on the roads today. Some of them. Lockmaster quarters, your powerhouse, storage buildings, workshops, and field equipment were all located on site. I spoke to her earlier that my father-in-law, he's lockmaster at 52, and my wife actually lived in some of the lockmaster quarters down there. And so she's been around it, he's been around it, so I had a nice source to gather information from. Yeah, that was, they used to live on site. I couldn't imagine doing that. I'm glad I don't do that. I live close, but I don't want to be there listening to that whistle non-stop all night long. All of the equipment for the gates and for the lock were powered by your electric hydraulic motors. It fed your valves, your gates, your gate controls. It's all done by hydraulics, and it's still the same way today. A lot of
On the main floor,
what's that?
Was that all on the main floor, the equipment?
Yeah,
Looks like
yeah, yeah. When you come in, that would be your powerhouse. That's where it gets its name. That's where the power is fed from, and then they would run it down to the lock. And then, okay, so now there's your wicket dam. Original locking dams was a wicket construction. Wickets were invented in 1852. Like I said, they're French. They were invented in France. They were made of wood on a steel frame and rested on a ribbon bottom when not in use. When needed, the wickets were raised and lowered with power from a steam engine. What they would do is along your, let's see if I got it. There's your gates. See right here, whenever they would start to move the wicket dams, this boat here would be faced up to it on the first 20 of them. And what they would do is they would lift those up using a crane. And once they got those 20 set, then they would lay the boat sideways on it. And then on the stern of the boat, you'd have two people that maintain the stern line. And that stern line would run from your wall all the way out as they fed. Oops, I knew I was gonna do that. And so that's, they would do them one at a time. They would do them in stages. You could do the first 20 if you needed to stop just a little bit of water, and leave the pass still open. Boats could still go through there. And then the next stage would go, and then you would end up shutting it down. But that's kind of the flow of the wickets. You'd always start from your wall, and the cable would just kind of feed you out as you went. Each wicket was 4 foot wide. They range from 10 to 20 feet. Most locks provided 800 foot a pass, which is about 200 wickets. So you would have 200 of these that ran out to your bear traps. And these here are your bear traps. There's only 2 of them. Some of the old locks had 3. Most of them had 2. I think they experimented with 1, and they tried different things. But 2 pretty much came standard on all of the wicket dams. The operation for lowering and raising, you required about 8 to 12 people 2 crane operators. They controlled the crane. Then you have your 2 steermen that fed your line out as you needed it and pulled you back in when you were done. And then 4 to 8 people would assist with the wickets, because some of these wickets you have to manhandle to get in. I mean, you're using a crane, but there's an art to it. I mean, once you do it a few hundred times, you get the rhythm. Some of the old guys, especially in the first 20, after the first 20, that very next one, that 21st one, I guess was the most difficult one for them to do. I mean, you had your old timers that pretty much get out of the way. I'll do it, because they knew exactly how to maneuver themselves to get that thing to lock in place. But yeah, in normal operation would probably take 12 to 18 hours if you didn't have any problem. And that's all weather times. I mean, you'd be out there in ice and sun. I mean, both of them beat you down. But yeah, you'd be out there for 18 hours as long as nothing went wrong. You run into problems, of course, that's going to increase by a lot. I think I went past it, didn't I? I'm sure most of you have seen lock gates. Like I said, the hydraulics would control them, and you could swing them independent of each other. There's controls on the land side and on the middle side. Most of the time, they built a shack over your controls, and you could work each gate by itself, and that helps with like drift. You get drift in there. It's amazing how when you swing gates, how it'll kind of undrift itself. I mean, just the flow, you get used to swinging your gates in, and you know that if you take this one back out a little bit, it'll move that drift right out of your way. And it's just, from doing it year after year, you kind of learn the secrets of the best way to move, which gate. High water, you get a lot of drift. You would do them one at a time, because as you're moving this one, it would suck the drift out from behind the other one. And so you would, and then once you got to a certain point, you would start the other one, get it set, and then do the same thing with the other one. So it's a lot of back and forth with them. Here's a bear trap. Now bear traps are pretty straightforward. There's not a lot about a bear trap. They're done manually. They've got 3 levers: an upper, a middle, and a lower. The upper is you hand crank it. There's no power run to them. They're just manual crank, and you open those valves, and as you open that valves, it would drop your bear trap down. The middle tunnel is what allowed that water to flow. So your top 2 would control, and your middle one would allow that water to flow. So if you need a dam, a lot of times what they use these for is if they had a lot of, they had all their wickets down. They were using the pass, and you had a little bit of water coming. Not enough to warrant going out to put up all your wicket dams, but you just had enough water to where you're gonna have a little bubble of up. So you go out there and you would run your bear traps up and stop with just a little bit of water, and then that would keep you from, maybe running out your wicket dams. Usually you'd end up out there anyway, because rivers go up and down so quick. I always say if somebody sneezes, the river goes up. Especially the lower you get down to 13 feet. A slight sprinkle, and it seems like the water's up 2 feet. But that's kind of a bear trap. It's pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of them. I thought I put it in there, but of the without water on them. But all they simply do is they lay flat, and they, and they're water forced. There's no power to it. You're just opening up a valve, and that's what we do mostly, is just open valves and let Mother Nature take over. And then of course there's the original powerhouse still there. It's used for small events and can be reserved through the town office. I know it's kind of quick, but I'll answer any questions if anybody's got any questions or anything.
Wickets like the props. Do you ever get silt and sand where they won't catch it?
Yeah, I mean, debris is a nightmare. If it gets bad enough, you have to put divers in the water. I mean, you have to get down there. down, especially, I'll reference 52 a lot because they were around. Speaking of 52, I wanted to mention, just kind of give you an idea of these old steamboats. The same steamboat was used from 1926 to 2018 when they shut the place down. I mean, it's amazing. You know,
Wow.
I never really thought about it, but yeah, the same steamboat, same operation type was done all those years. They never changed it. Of course, now at Olmsted they have wickets as well, but they use towboats and barges. You know, they have hydraulic cranes instead of steam cranes. So yeah, it's a different world. But yeah, they use that steam engine for the life of the place.
Does your lock here, it looks like your lock here doesn't have wickets, or not many of them?
No, we don't have any wickets here. Yeah, ours are tanner gates.
But the old dam did.
The old dam did, yes. They had 200, roughly 200 of them, depending on the size of the path. I couldn't narrow those numbers down exactly, but if they fell in line with the other ones at the time, they would have an 800-foot pass, which is, and it's 4 foot wide. So that's 200 of them. 200 individual wickets. Yes, sir.
Since commerce recovered, we're seeing more and more barges waiting in line. We're back to where we were several years ago, which raises the question of, are we ever going to reconsider again changing that 600 to a 1,200 foot? So we have two 1,200 foots and we won't have so much backup of river
Yeah.
traffic.
I've not heard of any talk of ever doing that at Newburgh yet. Unfortunately, it'd be nice if we had a 1,200, but because that 600 sits idle a lot. I mean, we use the 600 chamber there at Newburgh for mostly pleasure craft or small tows, which we don't get a whole lot of small tows. Some of you guys might not realize Newburgh, as far as locked tonnage, because we didn't have the pass, how old wicket dams, 52 always had the most tonnage through it, but they didn't lock their tonnage. A lot of theirs ran the pass. Newburgh was for years the highest tonnage locked in the nation. I mean, we have a lot of traffic in Newburgh, and we, like I said, we stay busy. And it comes in spurts. I mean, you'll have shifts where you only have a handful of boats, and then you'll have some that you never set down. I mean, you're locking boats the whole time, But yes, it'd be nice to have a 1,200-foot chamber, but I have not heard any talk of one in Newburgh.
When the river gets really high, they flow over the other sections of the dam, doesn't it?
Yes.
The boats go over that section.
Yeah, the weir wall?
Right.
Yeah, they, once it gets to a certain level, we'll shut down the locks, and, used to, 15 years ago, the industry kind of took it on themselves to, when they would decide if they wanted to run the wall, the pass.
Right.
And now the district kind of gets more involved, because, it wasn't based off an accident, but there were some close calls, have a boat going up and not have enough power, and he ends up going backwards down, which I'm sure wasn't a good feeling for him. But yeah, they run that pass over there. We've got that island, which is kind of an obstacle, but they just kind of shoot it at an angle and just keep right on going. Pretty smooth once you get into it.
Do you have anything out there that tells them this is the amount of clearance you got, or?
Just what we have on, we tell them what we have on the upper, and
Do
they
do that by radio and stuff?
yeah, and they do their own math. We don't do math for them.
Okay.
That way, if the numbers aren't right, it's on them, not us.
Okay.
The lawsuit there.
Have you had any incidents where they've hit or they?
Not while I've been there. I got there in '99. The only thing I've run into is northbound barges. When you get into drift, which drift is a nightmare for those guys. They'll lose power and steering sometimes, and we've had a couple of barges, and I'm sure you've seen it on the news, a couple of barges break free and go through the dam.
Right.
That's actually happened twice in the last 3 years, I think. And I always expected the southbounder to get in trouble, but it's been northbounders each time, and each time it's due to drift getting into the rudders, and they lose steering, and then it's at the mercy of the river.
You've had some of your barges stuck in the locks, haven't you? Is that very often?
No, they don't break down too often. Every once in a while we'll get one that hit the wall and break a line or something, but it's pretty much a quick fix. They rewire it and get on down the river. Every once in a while they'll have a mechanical problem where they'll have to bring in a helper boat to help them push downriver or something. But yeah, the industry's pretty good about helping each other. Of course, they don't do it for free, but they will help each other. Yes, ma'am.
So what sort of happens in the opposite when the river levels get on the low end, during like a time like this where we don't have rain for a while and that can become a concern?
Yeah, I mean, the river's gonna do what the river's gonna do. What we'll do is we'll maintain our pool as long as we can, and then we'll shut it all off. Once we shut it all off, there's nothing we can do. You know, if it was to be an extended period, you know, your river would run low. You know, there at Newburgh, 12 foot is our normal pool on the lower end. We don't see it all that often. Most of the time we're above that. I think when I left last Wednesday, it was at 13 feet. You know, and that's summer. I mean, and that'll fluctuate between 13 to 15. Like I said, somebody sneezes and it, and we'll chase it all in the wrong. But to answer your question, you know, once we close off the dam, you know, there's nothing else we can do. We can't add no more water because our goal is to maintain that 10. So if we lose that 10, it shuts down our section of the river. You know, yeah, we could open up water, but that water will go away so quick that, you know, we're not gaining anything by doing so. So our lower water level, you know, we as operators don't really concern ourselves with it, but that's what the industry, you know, that's what they want to know. Yes, sir.
Do they give a little priority to the boats coming down? Because it's harder to hold yourself.
Priority wise is pleasure craft, or I'm sorry, your passenger boats is what I meant to say. Passenger boats, they get priority. Coast Guard boats, of course, get priority. You know, what we try to do, pleasure craft wise, is we'll try to get them in within 3 lockages. You know, we'll lock 3 towboats and then we'll try and lock, you know, pleasure craft, because I don't know if anybody's ever seen it, but when we shut down the big chamber, you know, traffic backs up like crazy, and you'll have yachts that want to come down and they have to wait, you know. But yeah, we do have priority type lockages. Barges can get priority, say if they're moving equipment for the Corps, they'll get priority, and it's just kind of a case-by-case basis. But passenger vessels we get those through because they have a set schedule, and Corps boats, of course, and Coast Guard boats. Yes, ma'am.
Every so often, we'll see large volumes of debris come down the river. Why is that it's in?
A lot of times what you're seeing is when we open up the dam, when we go all out, because you know, once you've shut them down, drift that's coming down river gets collected up there. And then once we open up all of our dam, that drift goes free. So that's probably what you're seeing. You'll see a batch, and then a few minutes later you'll see another batch, and because as we open up dam, because we do 3 at a time. That's what our limit is 3 at a time. And you'll see a big batch, and then we'll do 3 more. You'll see another big batch. But that's what you're seeing usually. Or you know, a lot of times the barges will push drift too. We'll get a lot of drift in our forebay. When they come down on that wall, it'll collect in front of them, and they'll push it down with them too. So you see that a lot of times too. Usually it'll work its way back up river anyway. The wind blowing the wrong way, it'll end up back in the small chamber, and the same piece of log will just make I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. You'll see the same thing make a trip around. And it's like, okay, we're gonna lock in again.
I remember hearing stories that the river froze one time back maybe in the 30s or early 40s.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but I've seen pictures of it. You know, people could walk across it. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I think the photos I seen were down in Metropolis area.
Yeah.
They walk over to Paducah from Metropolis.
Yeah, I think it came close in 77 or 78, one of those years, but it didn't freeze solid.
Yeah. Back then I wasn't around.
Yeah.
But I do remember seeing old pictures. Of course, the big flood in '37.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, those are usually the 2 things people talk about is when the river froze and when it flooded everything. But,
Is it because you're keeping the river at a minimum height and always have flow? Does that help to keep it from freezing?
freezing? Yeah. The lower the river gets and the colder it gets, you're more likely to freeze. It's, you know, speaking of freezing, it's been years since we've even had problems in the small chamber, because we don't use our small chamber a lot. The small chamber would freeze up. You would get layers of ice in there. But it's been several years since that's happened. But yeah, the more flow you have, the less, the less ice buildup you're gonna get. There's, talk about the Mississippi for a second, there's a lot of spots on the Mississippi River, even with navigational locks, there's barely any water. Sometimes a year, people can walk across on a drive and not get wet. There's certain areas that which is crazy when you think about the Mississippi, huge, but it can dry out too. And that's what we try to avoid with our locks and dams.
Has it changed over time?
What's that?
Has
The
it
levels?
changed over time, the levels? Yeah.
I know it's been 10 in Newburgh the whole time I've been there. I would think, like the old ones, they maintain 9 foot, so somewhere in the neighborhood of there. I think, we do 10, I think, Carrollton's at 11 foot on theirs, and like I said, that's all based off of, when I say 10 foot, you've got sea level, and then we hold 10 feet above sea level. So that's what we do. That's what we hold at Newburgh, is 10 foot above sea
So
level.
we're not like what Colorado has gone through.
No. Yes?
You mentioned 12 to 18 hours back. How long does it take to get through now?
Now?
Yeah.
Oh, for dam operations now?
Yeah.
If you're doing the wickets, it's about the same down at Olmsted. For us, it's just button pushes. It travels about a foot a minute. Once we get to 28 foot, we're all out. So our gates go on up to 60 or 70 feet, but from 28 to 70, they're just doing their own thing. But ours is just a button push, which is great. You don't even have to go outside. Everything's done on the 3rd floor. And so you push the button, push the button and lift it up. So it's like I said, it's about a foot a minute.
So like a half an hour or something? Or 20?
Yeah, well, if you're taking it all out, most of the time we do small operations. The higher the number gets, the bigger the operation will be. By the time you get up close to going all out, you're doing 18, 21 feet of dam, and just kind of depends. But yeah, the higher up, the more operation you have to make. Because if you're running 200 foot of dam and I close 1 foot, that ain't gonna do nothing. 10% is kind of a rule. I don't like to teach that rule to the new guys, because then they try to live by it. The river's always different. Every time it goes up and every time it goes down, it's different. So that's why I don't like using the 10% rule, but it's there. A lot of people live by it. So if you're running 200 feet of dam, 10% of it, you close 20 feet. But yeah, so that's kind of what we do. Yeah.
Are there any dams on the Mississippi?
On the Mississippi, yes.
There are.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's dammed all up and down too?
Yeah.
Because, what was it last year when it just was so dry and they were so, couldn't keep it going at all? And
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Once it gets to a certain level, Mother Nature takes over. There's nothing we can do to generate water. And they have the same concept as we do, is they try to maintain their pool. So what the bottom does, it does.
Did we have any control over that? I mean, the Ohio River system, over what happened in the Mississippi dam?
Well, we feed into the Mississippi.
Right.
So wherever we're feeding, below that, we kind of affect. Now when you're going up, you'll get a backfill. So when we're raising and there's a lot of water going downriver,
Right.
it kind of backfills into the Mississippi. And same with the lakes that feed into the Ohio, and they do the same thing. You'll have, wherever that juncture is, you'll have a backfill. So like John T., they've got Wabash just below them. Wabash pushes out a lot of water, it backfills into the Ohio, so their lower will actually climb, even though it's falling river, or it could be a falling river.
Right.
But if there's got a lot of heavy rain there on the Wabash, it kind of goes reverse for a little bit, and then it'll settle itself out. But yeah, once it gets to a certain level, it just dries up. And there's nothing we can do to generate water other than rain.
Have they ever put reservoirs, they consider putting reservoirs along to try to help, smooth out the average?
Well, that's what they'll use the lakes for that.
Mhm.
They communicate, when I make a dam operation in Newburgh, I tell John T, that way he can anticipate, John T. Myers, which is down at Mount Vernon, that way he can anticipate, 52 and 53 being the wicket dams, they would contact Barkley Lock and request water, or say, hey, can you hold water? Because, like I said, that a wicket operation was pretty time intensive. Getting a crew of 12 people together at 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes is difficult. So they would use the lakes to give them water or to take water. So that's kind of the reservoirs that they use. But I've never heard of them, building reservoirs just to help with water flow. Yes, sir.
About 10 years ago, we did a riverboat trip from St. Paul to St. Louis. And I think we went through 26 locks and dams on that trip. But I thought they told us below St. Louis there are no locks and dams.
There may not be below St. Louis.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it stops, but there are locks on the Mississippi, especially the upper Mississippi.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because,
And some pretty big lifts on them too.
Yeah. We don't have much of a lift, it's 16 foot, between normal stages, we don't have much of a lift. Now, there's some that hundreds of feet, it's crazy. I mean, if you ever see pictures of Barkley, their lift down there is pretty sizable. I'm not sure exactly how big it is, but yeah, it's pretty big.
It's a neat trip if you ever get a chance to do it. Kind of pricey, but it's a neat trip.
Yeah, my wife's mentioned it a few times over the years, and I was like, I ain't paying that.
It's worth
it. I've seen enough of the river, I know what a lock does.
It's worth it.
Yes, sir.
The old dam, the wickets, they were hinged at the river floor?
Yes.
Something like that?
Yeah, your middle point there.
Yeah.
Get back to one. Oops. No, I didn't know it was going to be that far back.